අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Sunday, the 9th of July 2023. New economy. Sri Lankan economy will be freer with the changes, says President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Our final aim is a highly competitive economy, a green economy and a digital economy.
Central Bank Governor defines debt optimization as a clear message.
This is sector in domestic debt completion. It has given a clear message to external creditors.
Reaching targets. Economic experts are hopeful of achieving growth targets following domestic debt restructure.
It would restore investor confidence in Sri Lanka, and it would enable Sri Lanka to borrow again, and finally it would probably reduce economic vulnerabilities and lay the foundations for long-term growth.
Infrastructure. Highways Minister confident of completing the construction of the elevated port access road by September next year. Extended. CD Wickremaratne to serve as IGP for a further 3 months.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නා සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරම.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to AdaDerana First at 9. I'm AdaDerana joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now in your top story tonight, President Ranil Wickremesinghe says Sri Lanka's economy will be freer with the changes that will be introduced in a bid to make it a highly competitive green economy. Addressing a webinar themed Is Sri Lanka Ready for Investment organized by the International Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka, the head of state said that the government is focusing on making Sri Lanka a logistics center in South Asia. Meanwhile, the central bank governor, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, said that the government's domestic debt optimization strategy is a clear message to the external creditors, which will facilitate them in providing essential relief to the island nation.
The changes that Sri Lanka has started on will result in a much freer economy, further liberalization. Our final aim is a highly competitive economy, a green economy and a digital economy. The initial steps have been taken in regard to all these 3 objectives. We have already decided to divest a large number of state-owned enterprises. We are focusing on a number of new initiatives to make Sri Lanka a regional logistics center, to increase its tourism and to aim at upmarket tourism, looking at the scenic beauty and the other special opportunities available in Sri Lanka. The digital economy will also pick up speed in the coming few years. These are but some of the initiatives that we have started, and I would like all of you to consider what Sri Lanka has done and examine the opportunities and the potentials that you will have investing in Sri Lanka.
Last week, we successfully launched domestic debt optimization strategy. And as I said, we already see a very positive response from the markets. Stock exchange has sharp increase, and the debt markets, interest rates in the markets are falling sharply, and markets are very positive to even part of the digital sector in domestic debt completion. It has given a clear message to external creditors so that they will be able to give us necessary relief within a very short period and restore the sustainability. That is the next immediate kind of important step in terms of maintaining overall macroeconomic stability and stable fiscal and monetary conditions. So we are confident that we should be able to achieve that if you want to look at Sri Lanka. If you want to take the advantage of the future medium to long-term growth path, this is the time. With this stable situation, economic recovery in real terms will commence from second half. So the halfway through this year, plus full year from next year onwards, there will be real economic activity picking up. We will be moving into positive growth territory with low inflation, high reserves, stable exchange rate. This is what people are looking for from the medium to long-term investment perspective.
With the government policy, His Excellency Ranil Wickremesinghe has set its target on a renewable energy drive. So our targets are 70% renewable energy by 2030, which needs a massive amount of investments in terms of foreign direct investment, $0.5 billion to the sector by 2030. So over 7 years, we're looking at about $5.5 billion on infrastructure development and about $6 billion for development of generation, transmission and distribution. Ability forecasted, we're looking at about 5,000 additional megawatts of renewable energy by 2030. And I would say we are well on our way to achieving those targets.
Meanwhile, former Director of Research at the Asian Development Bank Institute, Dr. Ganeshan Vignarajah, says that the government's decision to restructure domestic debt will reduce economic vulnerabilities and lay the foundation for long-term economic growth. In our new segment, Debt Treatment, What's Next?, Dr. Vignarajah said domestic debt restructuring will help entice the external creditors to agree on serious haircuts on debt values and maturity terms.
Internationally, restructuring domestic debt often plays a role in resolution of debt crises, such as the case in Sri Lanka. But it has also bred controversy, particularly relating to different estimates of the losses from the EPF in Sri Lanka. My guess is that the government of Sri Lanka felt that domestic debt restructuring would realize net benefits to the country. One is really to entice foreign creditors to agree on serious haircuts on debt values and debt maturity terms. And remember, our domestic debt is some $42 billion, which is quite a large amount in today's context. The principle of fairness in these debt negotiations means that the pain of haircuts has to be shared between domestic and foreign sources. A related issue from the domestic debt restructuring, the government would probably argue, is that it would restore investor confidence in Sri Lanka. And it would enable Sri Lanka to borrow again. And finally, it would probably reduce economic vulnerabilities and lay the foundations for long-term growth. One other positive that may come out of this domestic restructuring exercise is that the banking sector is largely exempt from this exercise, and this will help to avert a domestic banking crisis which would have brought much misery to ordinary Sri Lankans. The economy is in a better place compared to last year, but we are still not out of the woods yet. If we do an IMF program properly and do economic reforms along with it, we stand a sporting chance of coming out of this crisis. This will help future generations of Sri Lankans prosper.
Meanwhile, earlier today, Minister of Transport, Highways and Mass Media, Bandula Gunawardena, commented on the implementation of the Port Access Elevated Highway project, highlighting that 30% of the project is yet to be completed. He stated that the project is expected to be concluded by the end of September next year. Addressing a media briefing, the minister further added that an expenditure of $60.2 million will have to be incurred by the local government to conclude the entire project.
A special inspection tour of the Port Access Elevated Highway project was led by Minister of Transport, Highways and Mass Media Bandula Gunawardena today, along with a group of Chinese stakeholders involved in the project. The Port Access Elevated Highway project commenced in 2019 to alleviate traffic congestion in the densely populated areas of Colombo, improve last-mile connectivity from the country's expressway network to the international port in Colombo, provide better logistic services for freight operations, and to facilitate regional trade. The project includes the construction of an elevated toll highway spanning approximately 5.3 kilometers between the New Kalani Bridge and Golf Face in central Colombo, which aims to provide a direct link to the city centre and the port from the Colombo-Kotnayak Expressway via the New Kalani Bridge. The Port Access Highway project was originally scheduled to be concluded in 2023. However, delays occurred due to the fallout of the economic crisis in the country last year.
මේ දැවන්ත ව්‍යාපෘතිය සඳහා සම්පත්දායකත්වය නැත්තන් ණය සැපීම කරන්නේ ආසියානු සංවර්ධන බැංකුව. මුළු පිරිවැය ඇමරිකානු ඩොලර් මිලියන 360.2යි. ආසියානු සංවර්ධන බැංකුවෙන් ලැබෙන්නේ ඇමරිකානු ඩොලර් මිලියන 300යි. ශ්‍රී ලංකා රජය මගින් ඇමරිකානු ඩොලර් මිලියන 60.2ක් යෙදවිය යුතු වෙනවා. දැනට අත්පත් කරගෙන තිබෙන ප්‍රගතිය 69යි. කියන්නේ ආසන්න වශයෙන් 70%ක වැඩිම වෙලා තිබෙනවා. අපි මේ ව්‍යාපෘතිය අවසන් කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා 2024 සැප්තැම්බර් 30 වෙනිදා.
After the completion of the project, it can provide better facilitation for the port cargo transportation deliveries and solve the problems and difficulties of the city congestions for the people of Colombo. We have revoked and took the advantage of the global resources of CCECC to support the implementation of the product. We have the same goal with our client and the consultants to make a success of the product. It's a strong team. We have the confidence to complete the work on time with the good quality, the best quality and safety.
Meanwhile, the Secretary to the President, Saman Nekanayaka, has made a request to the general public, urging them to return any coats of arms of archaeological or artistic value which belong to Sri Lanka's former governors and past presidents. Accordingly, these items of archaeological and artistic value are requested to be handed over to the Presidential Secretariat by the 31st of July. During the time period from the 9th to the 14th of July, when the Colombo Fort Presidential Palace was occupied by protesters, various valuable archaeological artifacts were misplaced. The items of value include coat of arms associated with former governors and past presidents of Sri Lanka. According to the President's Media Division, the Secretary to the President emphasized that retaining possession of these official insignia beyond the specified period will result in legal consequences, as the unlawful possession of state property is a punishable offence. The President's Secretary also said that the public's assistance is crucial in locating these coats of arms of significant national importance, and added that the public's assistance is deeply appreciated. Meanwhile, President Ranil Wickremesinghe has decided to extend the tenure of C.D. Wickramaratne as the Inspector General of the Police, subject to the approval of the Constitutional Council. The decision was made by the head of state during the meeting with the Minister of Public Security, Derana English, which was held earlier this evening. The tenure of the 35th Inspector General of the Police, C.D. Wickramaratne, was expected to end from the 26th of March this year. However, President Ranil Wickremesinghe extended his tenure by another 3 months until the 25th of June until a suitable appointment is made for the position. Even though IGP Wickramaratne's extended tenure ended on the 26th of June, the government is yet to make an appointment to the position of the IGP. With that being the case, a special meeting took place between the President and the Minister of Public Security, Derana English, this evening to decide on the appointment of a new Inspector General of the Police due to the impending retirement of Wickramaratne. During the meeting, a decision was made by the head of state to extend the tenure of IGP C.D. Wickramaratne by a further 3 months. According to the President's Media Division, IGP Wickramaratne has been granted a 3-month service extension as the police chief, subject to the approval of the Constitutional Council. Meanwhile, the Committee on Public Accounts recently uncovered that the implementation of the data system which was handed over to the Ministry of Women, Child Affairs and Social Empowerment in 2019 has not been operational. During the COPA session, State Minister Diana Gamage urged the need to digitize all procedures of state institutions, highlighting that other countries have surpassed Sri Lanka in terms of digitization.
සෑම වර්ෂ 5කට වරක්ම එක්සත් ජාතීන්ගේ සංවිධානයට අපි කාලාන්තර වාර්තාවක් ලබා දෙන්න ඕන ළමා ප්‍රඥප්තියට අනුව. එතකොට මේකෙදි සියලුම ආයතනවල දත්ත මගහැරීමකින් තොරව ලබා ගැනීමේ අරමුණින් තමයි මේ දත්ත පද්ධතිය හදලා තිබ්බේ. නමුත් විවිධ ප්‍රායෝගික ගැටලු නිසා ඒක ක්‍රියාත්මක වුණේ නැහැ.
දැන් දත්ත පද්ධතිය කවුද හැදුවේ?
සකස් කළේ අපේ අමාත්‍යාංශය මගින්. සේව් ද චිල්ඩ්‍රන් ආයතනය තමයි ඒකට මූල්‍ය අනුග්‍රහය ලබා දුන්නේ. 2019 දී මේ දත්ත පද්ධතිය අමාත්‍යාංශය වෙත පවරලා දීලා තියෙනවා. නමුත් දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවේ ඒ අවස්ථාව වෙනකොට අපිට සර්වර් පහසුකමක් නැහැ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවේ. සහ ඒ හේතුව මත මේක හොස්ට් කරන්න අපිට ගැටලුවක් ඇති වුණා. අපිට IT සම්බන්ධ දැනුම තියෙන මේ නිලධාරියෙක් නැහැ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවේ සහ අමාත්‍යාංශයේවත් එවැනි නිලධාරියෙක් නැහැ පහසුකම ලබා ගන්න.
කියන විදිහට දත්ත පද්ධතිය ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙලාම නැද්ද?
නිලධාරීන්ට තේරුම් ගන්න අපහසුතා තිබුණා. ඒක යූසර් ෆ්‍රෙන්ඩ්ලි නැtei කියන තත්වයක් තිබුණා. ඒ නිසා අපේ අමාත්‍යාංශ නෙවෙයි අනිකුත් නිලධාරීන් ලව්වා මේක කරව ගන්න එකේ ගැටලු තිබුණා. මේක හරි සීරියස් වැඩක්. ළමා නිවාස තුල සිටින ළමයින් ගැනවත් අපිට කී දෙනෙක් ඉන්නවද කියලාවත් ඇත්තටම දත්ත නැහැ.
කියන්නේ දත්ත තියෙනවා මන්ත්‍රීතුමිය මේ ඩේටා බේස් එකේ දත්ත.
ඒ කියන්නේ මැනුවලි තියෙනවා ඔයගොල්ලෝ.
මැනුවලි තියෙනවා මම.
මම නම් මේක දකින්නේ මේ රට මෙහෙම යන්න බෑ. අනිත් රටවල් ඔක්කොම අපි අභිභවා ගිහිල්ලා මේ ඩිජිටල් කරන්නේදී. මේ ඔක්කොම ඩිජිටල් වෙන්න ඕනේ. මේ අපි ගේන හැම ආයතනයකම මේ ප්‍රශ්නෙම තමයි තියෙන්නේ. සභාපතිතුමා අපි ඔක්කොම මේ පැත්තක තියලා මෙන්න මේකට ඉස්සර විසඳුමක් හොයාගන්න වෙයි. මේ ඩිජිටල් කරන්න මේ ඔක්කොම.
දැන් රාජ්‍ය ආයතන 23ක් දත්ත පද්ධතියට ඒකාබද්ධ කිරීම පිළිබඳව වෙනම යනවා වැඩ දැන් අපි ජූලි 7 වෙනිදා ඒක ඇඳවලක් තියෙනවා. ඒකේ වැඩ පිළිවෙල ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙනවා. මේ හදපු සොෆ්ට්වෙයාර් එක ඒක හැදුවේ කවුද?
සයන්ස් ලෑන්ඩ් කියන.
එයාලා සල්ලි ගෙවල ඉවරද?
ඔව්.
සල්ලි ගෙවල ඉවර නැහැ වැඩේ වෙලා නැහැනේ. දැන් එයාලා තාම සර්විසස් දෙනවද එයාලා?
දැන් සර්විසස් දෙන්නේ නැහැ ගරු සභාපතිතුමා.
මේ දරුවන්ගේ මේ වගේ අවශ්‍යතාවයක් ගැන කියලා කිව්වොත් ඕන තරම් මේකට උදව් කරන්නත් අය ඉඳී.
ඔබතුමියලා ප්‍රශ්නය හඳුනා ගන්නවා නම් ඒකට අපේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාල වලින් ලබා දිය හැකි පිළිතුරක් පිළියමක් ලබා දෙන්න මම කැමතියි. කරුණාකරලා ප්‍රශ්න ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න. මේ hardware problem එකක් තියෙනවා, software problem එකක් තියෙනවා, IT personal problem එකක් තියෙනවා. අපි will look at the question very deeply, then we can find an answer to it. That is my contribution to this meeting.
Now, a 28-year-old youth has died following a tragic zipline accident. More news on that on the other side of this short commercial break. Stay with us.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ටීමෝ වෙතින්. අපේ ගෙදරත් ආපිකෝ මෙට්‍රස් තමයි. මාදිලි රසකින් යුත් මෙට්ටලුවේ ප්‍රමුඛයා ආපිකෝ මෙට්‍රස් සැපනින්දට සැප මෙට්ට.
Now, breaking news on AdaDerana 24.
Now in breaking news, a bus from Polonnaruwa to Kathankudi collides on the Kottaliya bridge at Manampitiya and topples into the river in Polonnaruwa hospital. Sources confirm that 8 persons reportedly dead from the incident. Here's that news again. A bus from the Polonnaruwa to Kathankudi collides on the Kottaliya bridge at Manampitiya and topples into the river. Polonnaruwa hospital sources confirm that 8 persons reportedly dead from the incident.
Now, breaking news on AdaDerana 24.
Meanwhile, in local political news, Assistant Leader of the United National Party, Akaliviraj Karivasam, called upon all parties to work together as an alliance during the upcoming presidential election. Meanwhile, parliamentarian of the Samagi Janabalawegaya, Chaminda Vijayasiri, said certain SLPP parliamentarians will not support the President Ranil Wickremesinghe during the soon-to-be-held election. With that, here are some views expressed in the political arena today.
ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ මැතිතුමාට අන්තිමට ගෙදර යන්න සිද්ධ වුණේ එතුමාට හරි දේ මොකද්ද වැරදි දේ මොකද්ද කියලා හරියට निराකරණය කරගන්න පුළුවන් කමක් තිබ්බේ නැහැ. ළඟ හිටිය කීප දෙනෙක් වෙන හෙන්චයියෝ ටික දීපු ලනු ඔක්කොම කාලා එතුමා අපි වගේ අයව පැත්තකට දැම්මා. ඉතින් ඒකත් ප්‍රධාන හේතුවක් තමයි අද මේ රටේ ඇති වෙලා තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නේ. සුදුසු අයව පැත්තකට දාලා නුසුදුසු අයට තනතුරු ලබා දීම.
රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයාට ඒ වෙලාවේ ආසන 30ක් තිබ්බනම් මේ ජනාධිපතිතුමා උඩින් එළවන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලා මේ රට බේරගන්න එතුමාට අයිති දුන්නා. ශක්තිය දුන්නා. ඒක නැති කරේ මේ සජිත් ප්‍රේමද මහත්තයා ප්‍රමුඛ
ඔබ හිතනවා නම් පොදු ජන පෙරමුණේ පොහොට්ටුවේ සහයෝගී ඔබ ජනාධිපති වුණාට කියලා ඔබ මැතිවරණයක් තියන. පොහොට්ටුවේ සමහර මන්ත්‍රීවරු මැතිවරණයක් දබපු ගමන් ඔය කවුරු රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයා ළඟ හිට ගන්නේ නැහැ.
දැන් ඊළඟ ජනාධිපතිවරණයක් එන්නේ. ඒකට අපි ඔක්කොම පක්ෂ එකතු වෙන්න ඕනේ. මේක එලයින්ස් එකක් හැදෙන්න.
ජනාධිපති ඡන්දෙ තියන්න වෙනවා. කවදටද? ලබන අවුරුද්දේ නොවැම්බර් මාසේ 17 වෙනිදාට මාසයකට කලින්. ඒ කියන්නේ ඔක්තෝබර් 17ට කලින්.
JVP එක මොනවද රටේ කරේ? ඒගොල්ලෝ ප්‍රාදේශීය සභා කළා. අනුර කුමාර දිසානායක හිටියා වාරි මාර්ග කුෂිකර්ම මහවැලි ඔක්කොම ඇමති වෙලා හිටියා. කොහෙද JVP එක වැඩ කරලා තියෙන්නේ? JVP එකත් කයියට හොඳයි.
Meanwhile, a 28-year-old was reported dead following a fatal ziplining accident in the Kudaoya commando camp. Meanwhile, 100 acres of the Bibilahena Forest Reserve were destroyed following a forest fire which spread due to the current dry weather conditions. A 28-year-old individual was reported dead following a fatal accident at the Commando Regiment Training School in Uva Kudaoya. The deceased, who had been ziplining, fell off and drowned in the muddy water. It was further reported that the inability to locate him underwater within a short time resulted in the tragic death. Meanwhile, 15 Indians on 2 trawlers were arrested last night while illegally fishing in the waters of the Delft Island within Sri Lankan sovereign territory. The individuals were apprehended following a special operation executed by the Sri Lankan Navy in order to chase away Indian poachers from Sri Lankan waters. Over 100 acres of the Bibilahena Forest Reserve in Vallavaya have reportedly been destroyed in a fire which broke out within the reserve last evening. The fire has spread rapidly following prevailing severe dry and weather conditions in the area, destroying many flora and fauna in the reserve. In international business news, US jobs growth slowed last month in a sign that the weight of high interest rates may be starting to slow the world's largest economy. As reported by the Labour Department, employers added 209,000 jobs in June, the smallest gain in more than 2 years. Hiring has remained strong despite the Federal Reserve's benchmark interest rate jumping more than 5% in little over a year. Wages also continue to increase, with the average pay up 4.4% from a year ago. However, the labour market is still reported to remain tight. Economists have been predicting a downturn following the high interest rates, which force consumers to reduce their spending in other areas and make borrowing for company growth more expensive. Further, analysts emphasize that they still expect the US Central Bank to raise rates again at its next meeting this month. Forecasts released by the bank at its last meeting indicate that the majority of officials' expectations are to increase interest rates in a bid to stabilize prices. And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of AdaDerana First at 9. Stay in touch with us on www.adaderana.lk for the latest developments around the clock. Thank you. Have a great night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.